Thank you, Chairman. Thanks for being here, everybody. Look, a couple things. First, what we're seeing here, what we're witnessing with the Biden family, frankly, is just a web of concealment, of deception. A lot of people would say corruption. But let's be very clear. You have this many companies involved, this velocity of transactions, size of transactions. Like my colleagues have said, this is not how normal businesses operate. I had the ability with Chairman Comer and other members of the committee to go over to the Treasury building and review documents. And having read those documents, one thing became pretty crystal clear that there were many people who had serious questions about the transactions and about the velocity of these transactions, and they either get very, very deep into concealment, hiding money, shifting money, and for the purpose, we don't know, because one thing everybody in this room and the American people definitely know is that the Biden family doesn't really have a business. There is no business structure around this family except politics. And since Joe Biden has spent decades in the Senate, served 8 years as vice president, and is now president of the United States, and the family's getting money from various countries and foreign businesses through various shell companies and this web of LLCs. I mean, guys, you in the press, this is easy pickings. I'm giving you Pulitzer stuff here. Like, all you have to do is literally look at our memo and see the level of detail upon which they have created this. And it's very, very frustrating. We have now been able to clearly see that the Biden's associates, like Rob Walker, Eric Sherman, as has been discussed, created at least 16 companies while Joe Biden was vice president of the United States. 16 companies created while he was vice president. Now the list is 20, and as we continue our investigation, that list is growing. And like I said before, the question is, to serve what purpose? And the purpose of all these companies being created is to conceal money that the Biden family has been gaining because Joe Biden has been sitting at the upper echelon of our politics for almost 5 decades. That is the entire purpose here. Here's an example of what I mean. You have Rosemont Seneca Partners, Rosemont Seneca Advisors, Rosemont Seneca Technology Partners, RSP Holdings, RSTP2 Alpha, RSTP2 Bravo, Rosemont Seneca Thornton, Rosemont Seneca Bohai. I want to make sure I pronounce it right. Bohai, Bohai. And the list goes on and on. Cycling through this many companies serves no legitimate purpose. And as somebody who actually worked in banking, I did that long before I came here. Whenever there was like this many companies just laying all over the place, and you see wire transfers and cashier checks over here going to random members of the family for no apparent purpose, at the size and velocity at which all of this was being conducted, the only logical conclusion of a financial professional is you are concealing money. Let me restate this. You are concealing money from either the IRS or from credit agencies or from other people in general. That's the only reason you set up a structure like this. Some of these companies were connected to Hunter's personal professional company, Oswego, or Skinny Atlas, Scale Atlas, however you want to pronounce it. And the list goes on, and Mr. Biggs, he talked about Hudson West 3 and some of those other issues that were going on as well. One thing I want to make sure is that all of this has happened and Joe Biden is aware. Nobody in this room can logically sit here and say that the President of the United States had no idea that these companies were being formed while he was vice president of the United States. And I will add you, he was probably in better mental shape then than he is today. I'll throw that out there. And so what this committee is going to continue to do is pursue this investigation. We are going to continue to document, and we're going to provide that information to all of you in the press. So to help you, and frankly, like Congresswoman May said, and probably help the DOJ along with their investigation. One quick note, it's interesting that the Department of Justice has been investigating Hunter Biden for quite some time, and we seem to just never really get anywhere. And so I think that's also interesting as well. I wonder what's going on at the Department of Justice. But that being said, the bottom line is there is no real business here. None. And let me also say this, because I know there are many in this room who wanted to go down all the various schemes that our colleagues on the other side of the aisle accuse the former president of, be very clear. The former president actually had a business, very big business. You could say it was his name, you could say it was his buildings, you could say it was wine, you could say it was branding, you could say it was The Apprentice, but he had a very big and legitimate business, which everybody in this room clearly knows and understands and can point to and say, that's the thing, that thing over there. Joe Biden has no business except his position in politics. And it is the requirement of this committee to investigate that. We're going to continue to do that, and we're going to let the facts speak for themselves. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Lastly, we'll have Representative.
Gentleman from Massachusetts reserves, and the gentleman from Texas is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I yield 2 minutes to my friend, Mr. Donalds from Florida.
Gentleman is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise today in support of H.R. 529, and let's be very clear. The issue that is happening at our southern border, not the name calling or talking about former President Trump, what is happening at our southern border today and for the last 2 years under President Biden has been a dereliction of duty with respect to immigration law in the United States. If you want to speak to the actual issues at hand, it is the fact that the asylum provisions under Joe Biden are a bastardization of asylum procedure as set forth in federal law by Congress. Congress never anticipated that you would have 6 million plus people come through the asylum process in 2 years. Congress never contemplated that you would have an asylum procedure where you would have people on a 7 to 10 year wait list to actually go through an asylum procedure. The president knows this is the case, and it is being done on purpose. That is a congressional purview, and that actually is a dereliction of his duty to faithfully execute the laws of the United States. So if the minority party wants to ask about why we are here, it is that. Because it is my belief and the belief of many members on our side of the aisle that this resolution should go to the Homeland Security Committee so they can fully debate and go to the depths upon which Joe Biden has been derelict in his duty to execute the laws with respect to immigration in the United States, which has major impacts on the American people. There are 100,000 Americans who have died from fentanyl overdoses because of his dereliction of duty. We have drug cartels on our southern border who have operational control of the southern border because of his dereliction of duty. And if the president and congressional Democrats actually took the time to investigate this, like going to the southern border, they would know this too. I support this resolution.
Gentleman's time.
Members should be in support of it as well.
Gentleman's time's expired.
All right. To John Malili, Cape Coral. Did I say your last name right? Yes. Okay. What and when is Congress going to impeach President Biden for obvious corruption? So I guess people are interested in this question. All right.
So here's my comment behind that. We have no confidence left in this government.
Yes.
We know we put millions of dollars. Anyone in here that committed that crime would be a political prisoner in Washington, D.C. in solitary confinement, where this country is holding Christians in solitary confinement.
Yes.
For trespassing. I have no confidence in this government, none. And he's going to get away with it.
Well, I would say on the last point, I would say hold on to that one for a second. So I sit on oversight committee. I think everybody in the room knows this. A couple things. Number one, the information that is now available to the public, that would not have come out if we weren't in control of the oversight committee. So we were able to get to the bottom of this. With everything that has come forward now, everything from suspicious activity reports at the Treasury Department, which I've read, there's about 200 of them. I've read about 30 of them. Between the different members of the Oversight Committee, we've read all these reports. They are real reports. A suspicious activity report is a report that is filed with by a financial institution with the Treasury Department. So this is not a political document. When we were reading those, it became pretty clear that many financial institutions were concerned about aspects of money laundering and concealing funds from the IRS. They were concerned about it then. We went from there to being able to depose certain individuals based upon what we read, and that information led us to see that they set up these LLCs, which were set up, that we've had the legal filings, that multiple accounts were set up. We have those documents around that, and the purpose was to move money through the various accounts. It was because of Chuck Grassley in the Senate and people who contacted Senator Grassley that we found out about the forms that the FBI have from their whistleblower. When reading those forms, we found out about the whistleblower saying, the confidential human source saying that, well, according to the FBI, this human source is highly valuable and highly credible. And they've been paying this human source, they paid him or her more than $200,000 over the last 8 years to deliver information to the FBI. So they've documented on the FBI's form that the human source says that Hunter Biden and Joe Biden both took $5 million from somebody associated with Burisma, and the purpose was to get the prosecutor in Ukraine fired, to take the heat off Burisma. I think the thing that gets lost in the shuffle is that the reason why Burisma wanted the prosecutor gone is because Burisma wanted to buy into a holding company in the United States in the oil and gas field in order to raise capital in the United States. And they knew that if they were under investigation in their home country, they would never be able to raise capital in the United States. So that's why the money was conveyed according to the confidential human source. That led to the IRS whistleblowers coming forward in the Ways and Means Committee, and the IRS whistleblowers, one of whom is the supervisory agent on the case, has testified that their investigations were downplayed or held back, and that came from the political brass at IRS and the Department of Justice. So I say all that to say that my comments to the speaker and to my colleagues is that, in my view, we actually have a two-track process for impeachment. I think the first is with Merrick Garland, the Attorney General. The second is with the President of the United States. Now, I want to be clear on this, and this is the part where this is really concerning. With what is going on at the political levels of the IRS and in the Department of Justice and the FBI, there is a complete lack of trust with the political brass of these agencies. I think you have a lot of men and women who work in these agencies. They are patriots, they are good people, they're Republicans, they're Democrats, they're independents, they do their job, they follow the law. But what we have seen is that it is the political brass that has caused so many problems. So I think that impeachment is one thing, but wholesale reform of these agencies at the political level is another. And that must be done. That must be done. The last thing is, and even when we took the majority and we knew in oversight that we were going to look into these suspicious activity reports, because we were given information about it and we really wanted to follow through. And even from the beginning, people said, "Oh, okay, you guys are in charge. Now go and impeach." And my statement's always been clear: impeachment is serious. This is a serious charge against an official of our government if we go to that level. And we shouldn't cheapen it just because, of political getbacks, even though what happened to the former president was wrong and should not have happened. That you gotta have the evidence, you gotta have the facts. And I'll just tell you, from everything I've seen, we're close to having all the evidence we need. And I'll leave it at that.
Donalds from Florida.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. To the witnesses, thank you for being here today. I want to get right to it because we have a lot to cover. Mr. Ziegler, you are the agent that opened up this investigation. From your transcript, page 17, what it says is that you were investigating a social media company, and through the process of that investigation, you found out that Hunter Biden was paying potentially for prostitutes in a potential prostitution ring. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay. You also say that in the beginning phases of that investigation, reviewing bank reports, that there was evidence that he was living lavishly through his corporate bank account. Is that correct? And when I say him, I mean Hunter Biden. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay. Question for you, and also for Mr. Shapley. Is it a clear line of potential investigation if somebody is charging up massive living expenses through a corporate account and not doing that through their own personal accounts and not accounting for that properly on their income tax returns? Is that the basis of a criminal investigation?
Generally speaking, that would definitely be factors that would spur a criminal investigation, yes.
Okay. Let me ask you this question. Let me answer this question real quick. So there was reference to the WhatsApp text message referring to, and everybody knows it now, hey, I'm sitting here with my dad, tell the chairman to give me my money because we remember and we're not going to forget because we're the Bidens and we have all these connections, yada, yada, yada. We all know that text message now. Mr. Ziegler, on page 105 of your testimony, page 105, gentlemen, you state, I know we wanted to get location data because I went to the prosecutors with this and they again came back at me with, well, how do we know that? He could just be lying and claiming that dad, Joe Biden now, that dad was there and dad was not there. Were you allowed to get location data dealing with the WhatsApp text message?
So from my memory of it and from the notes that were taken, I never obtained location data regarding that message. Did
Miss Wolf, the AUSA in Delaware, did she say, oh wow, look at this text message, let's figure out the location data and see where Hunter Biden was when he sent said message? Was she like excited about this as a prosecutor?
So, I mean, when I asked her about the location data, in her response right here, it was her responding with, well, how do we know that? It wasn't yeah, let's try and figure that out. It was like, well, how do we know that?
Well, did she read the text message? Because if I read that text message as a prosecutor, I'm saying, wait a minute, dad is sitting next to him and dad happens to be the now president, then vice president of the United States. Shouldn't we find out where Hunter was when he sent said text message? I mean, I'm not a prosecutor, I'm a finance guy, but that just seems like common sense to me.
Yeah, and I think with the previous email that was referenced, 10 held by H for the big guy, now that you have those two things kind of correlating with each other, as a normal process or procedure that we would go through, you would want to figure out, is that information truthful in that WhatsApp message? I totally agree with you, Mrs. Ziegler, which is why I think it is the view of members on this committee, and frankly a lot of Americans at this point, that there are elements at the Department of Justice who did not want this information out, who did not want to go down the line of actually going through the evidence gathering process to see the depths to which this international pay-for-play scheme that was actually happening around Joe Biden, going through Hunter Biden, and all the money that the Biden family was incurring. That's not a question for you, that's just a statement from me. Last question, through your investigation, how much money did you uncover was coming from Ukraine, Romania, and China? If you hold on one second, let me reference the 17.3 million approximately.
Okay, so 17.3 million through your investigation, and you and Mr. Shapley, you are the guys that investigate criminal tax evasion on an international scale. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay, question for the chairman. Mr. Chairman, through the investigation of the Oversight Committee, about how much money have we seen come from Ukraine, Romania, and China?
Over 10 million.
Okay, so we have two separate investigations. One done by the investigative branch of the IRS that is charged with doing these types of investigations. These are the people you want doing them. And an independent investigation by the Oversight Committee. And we're coming up with the same amount of money, give or take a couple million, going through the same person in Hunter Biden. And his investigation is slow walked. And we're supposed to sit here and think that Joe Biden knows nothing? I think, for the record, Mr. Chairman, that the relevant committee needs to have questions for Leslie Wolf, the AUSA of Delaware, for David Weiss, the Attorney General of Delaware, for Lisa Monaco, who is the Deputy Attorney General, and for Merrick Garland himself, the Attorney General of the United States. Because if this action is allowed to occur, and investigations are slow walk with this level of detail, this ain't Donald Trump, y'all. These are facts. I yield back.
Thank you.
Mr. Dubinsky, I want to come to you quickly. A lot of talk about evidence. On the screens in the room, we have an organizational chart from the IRS investigative team that was looking into the business practices of Hunter Biden and his associates. This org chart is from 2014. Now, Mr. Dubinsky, when my former life, I was in community banking, and I'm comfortable with looking at organizational charts. When I first saw this chart, the first thing I thought about was a real estate holding company or a developer, and this is not to demean developers in the great East state of America, but developers typically have multiple companies that float with various business interests and business lines. But the funny thing is that in the business dealings of Hunter Biden, there is no real estate, none at all. So, Mr. Dubinsky, in your professional experience, looking at this organizational chart of business structure, what do you see here?
I see a very complicated structure of entities that are interrelated and would give me concern. If I were an investigator, I would want to know what's going on in these entities, who's behind them, how's the money moving between them, and what is the substance of the transactions? What's really going on here?
Mr. Dubinsky, do you think it's in the interest of this committee that is now in an inquiry phase to actually find out all of the flow of money between these entities and what the purpose was?
Absolutely.
Next slide, please. For my colleagues on the other side, we're going to start talking evidence now. This is now a slide of the organizational chart of the Hunter Biden business companies and with associates from 2018, from the same IRS investigators who were broke down the business structure in 2014. Does this slide cause you the same concern, Mr. Dubinsky?
Yes, it does.
Okay, now let's talk about some more. Actually, one point I want to make on this. Ladies and gentlemen, and I know it's kind of small, so I will submit all this for the record. I would love my colleagues on the other side to see this. In 2014, one of the key owners was Devin Archer, who did testify and was under deposition under oath by the Oversight Committee. In 2018, Devin Archer is no longer listed, but his wife, Krista Archer, is now listed. Mr. Dubinsky, when you see a situation where ownership interest moves from one spouse to the other, is that a concern of some level of fraud potentially?
I would call it a red flag. That's something I would look at and again, try to get to the bottom of what happened there. Was it just transferred? Was there money behind it? What was going on? Okay, thank you. Next slide.
Now, this is to a text message. This is a text message between, it's going to Naomi Biden. That's what this one is. Hold on, wait, so let me get my stuff back. There we go. Sorry. This is the WhatsApp text message between Jim Biden and Hunter Biden. In this text message, it clearly says, anyway, we can talk later, but you've been drawn into something purely for the purpose of protecting Dad. This is between Hunter Biden and Jim Biden. Last time I checked, the father of Jim Biden and Joe Biden is now passed away. So I'm assuming this is Hunter Biden saying to Jim Biden, the president's brother, that you've been brought in this for the sole purpose of protecting Dad. Miss O'Connor, do you think that this text message would lead this committee to get further information about the business dealings of Hunter Biden and how that actually links to Jim Biden, the president's brother, and why they are so concerned with protecting Dad, AKA Joe Biden, AKA the President of the United States?
Yes.
Thank you. Next slide, please. This is a text message between Hunter Biden and Naomi Biden. And this one is a famous one. Everybody knows this one. This is a famous one that says, I hope you all do what I did and pay for everything for this entire family for 30 years. It's really hard. But don't worry, unlike Pop, I won't make you give me half your salary. Mr. Dubinsky, if you saw a text message like this in a potential money laundering operation or a potential pay-for-play operation, would you be looking for information related to money going from son to father?
Absolutely, without a doubt.
Thank you. Next slide. Oh, this is a fun one. Ladies and gentlemen, this one is from 2018. This is about 4 months before Joe Biden launched his campaign for president of the United States, December 2018. The highlight is, this is a text message between Jim Biden and Hunter Biden. Hunter Biden was in a bad way, by the way. He was really strung out. He lost a bunch of money. He needed help. Jim Biden says, this can work. You need a safe harbor. I can work with your father alone. It'll probably take several months and everybody can read the text. Ms. O'Connor, Mr. Dubinsky, if you saw a text message like this between the president's brother and the president's son, wouldn't you be concerned about them trying to give plausible deniability for the president of the United States to not have any knowledge of said business dealings?
It's worth,
Gentleman's time's expired, but please answer the question.
it's worth investigating.
Mr. Dubinsky?
I would agree. I would investigate this.
I yield back. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Gentleman yields back. Before